Wherefore, Part 28. Tim has always seen himself as destined for greatness, but not heroism. He spent much of his childhood assuming that the way in which he would become great would just appear naturally. One of the hardest lessons of his teens, harder even than finding out what a grumpy demon can do to your pancreas, was discovering that it might not work like that. Greatness showed no signs of finding him. Sure, certain kinds of power, wealth, and opportunity are offered by demons all the time. As the clever son of a lifelong Satanist, Tim has long since worked out that the more you ask of a demon, the more they take from you. There are no good deals to be made with demons. Tim intends to be great. He sees selling one's soul for a pile of gold as being no wiser than selling it for a handful of allegedly magical beans. If a soul is worth selling, surely it is worth keeping. A spiritual kidney he may not understand, but is largely convinced he must need for something, which means that greatness can only be achieved with effort. Tim struggles with this because in his heart he feels greatness should be granted to him as his birthright. He should not have to make an effort to achieve it. Of course, it is possible that Tim has been right all along and that this deep truth about himself explains all else. It might be the case that this desire for effortless significance has left him open in certain ways. Perhaps it was only chance. As a narrator, I should be able to tell you outright how a thing works, but honestly, this stuff is hard to pin down sometimes. It is a lot to ask of a narrator that they delve so deeply into the details of a character like young Tim. For all our sakes, it is better to accept some ambiguity in the backstory, all right? So, we know that Tim has certain vulnerabilities, that he is young, egotistical, and a bit of an idiot. He's not obvious hero material, but I think this is what makes him so appealing right now. Obvious heroes don't need opportunities to shine, they'll just get on with being excellent out of the loveliness of their own courageous natures. It's the accidental, unwitting, and reluctant heroes who are the most interesting. Will they change? Will they make the grade, or will it be their failure that proves epic and incredibly funny? If you wanted a hero's journey where comedic disaster is always an option, you'd pick a young man like Tim. And so would I. So we are clear that you are wholly complicit in what's happening to Tim and that we do not really need to settle on another explanation. This is really happening to him because you want it to. And you have a role to play in this story too, and certain awkward responsibilities, but we'll get onto those at some other point. Ice. You probably think about it in specific terms, the ice on your window, the hazard of it beneath your feet. Granted, yes, these are manifestations of ice, but there is also ice. Think of it as the spirit of all ice that ever was and ever will be, if you find that helpful. If you like to insist on minds being squishy brain-shaped mammal organs, then this next bit may prove difficult. But I have great faith in your willingness to get to grips with these things. Ice, that ultimate collective of all ice, has intention. It has will and desire. It craves existence and longs to manifest in its largest and most enduring forms, namely glaciers and ice sheets. It wants to lie down on the land and have the land sink generously under the weight of it. There is a longing to overwhelm, cover, and possess the land, and I invite you not to bring too many ideas about human sexual relationships to all of this. In your whole life, you have never wanted anyone the way the ice wants the land. And you will never be so taken by someone as the taking of the land by glaciers. Your sex metaphors will never go far enough. The ice is melting. Ice sheets and glaciers retreating out of our place and time. Where does it go? The more literal-minded among you will raise your hands at this point to tell the rest of us that ice, when it melts, becomes water and goes back to the sea. But you'd be missing the point. The water goes back to the sea because it is water. The ice goes back to the ice. It goes back to a place that is not a place for us and not inside time as we know it, to the place of ice from whence all ice comes and where the spirit and intention of ice lives. It is in the nature of ice to expand, and as our world is too warm for it, The ice expands in other ways and looks for other realms to cover and smother and possess. The ice reaches out. Eating ice cream straight out of the tub at 3 a.m. isn't unusual behaviour for Tim. It goes with his preference for instant gratification and an awareness that he generally gets away with things. What is unusual is that Tim is crying. He has only previously cried over instances of bodily pain and personal thwarting. He has never before cried without knowing why, nor has he ever clutched a bag of frozen peas to his face and sobbed into it before. The peas are back in the freezer now, and the ice cream tub is in his hands. He will never be able to eat those peas. It would be like eating an animal he had previously had sex with. Let me remind you that Tim's mother is a devoted Satanist, and it may be better not to question where Tim gets his metaphors from. Also, I refer you to everything I said before about your complicity in all of this. Think carefully about what you project onto young Tim. Suddenly there is a blaze of cold white light inside his head. He looks at the open freezer door and the abused and rejected peas and sees how everything is connected. He slams the freezer door shut at once, overwhelmed by an unfamiliar passion. It is a cold, enduring passion. None of your short-lived fiery bursts for him now. He has seen the other way. He has seen where greatness lives and what it means to be majestic. He is a boy possessed, although he considers himself to be a man possessed. Being who he is, the touch of ice is not simply a wonder encroaching on his mind. It is not merely a call to try harder and shut the freezer door while eating ice cream. For many people, this frosting on their dreams will manifest as small nudges to heat the world up less. For Tim, it is the call to greatness he has been waiting for his whole life. He is seen, finally. His potential has been recognised and understood. Staring at the closed freezer, empty ice cream pot in one hand, he understands his own weeping as a moment of transformation and breakthrough. His old life is dead, and his true calling lies before him. He belongs to the ice. He is the agent of ice in the modern age, and it is his sacred and occult task to end global warming and usher in a new ice age. Tim is the sort of young man who can accept such a calling with no doubt that his natural gifts will make this work possible for him. He was meant for greatness, after all. Meanwhile, the ice reaches and explores for new landscapes in which to be deep and pervasive. The intent of the ice has no particular awareness of Tim. It has touched so many minds, and from the perspective of its own ancient enormity, none of them stand out. There is no cruelty in this lack of attention. The ice is truly very big, and on the grand scale of ice, Tim is an insignificant little fleck. But for the purposes of this story, we will grant him the intention he craves, although not the dignity he assumes he possesses.